What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Funko 411. On today's episode, we are going to be opening up some of the brand new Thrilljoy Pix, and this is the updated Pix line, not the one that we have over here, which now they're kind of rebranding as Pix Panoramic. But I got a bunch of different stuff for us to open. I've got a couple of the smaller ones too, the Pixels, but we're going to open these up. I've got basically like a full case, I guess you could say, of the Leonardo. So I bought 6 of these because I wanted to try to see if we could kind of guarantee ourselves a chase. So hopefully there's a chase in there, but since they do package them in sets of 3, I guess there's a chance there's not because it's supposed to be 1 in 6. But before we get into the unboxing and also doing like a little bit of a review of the new packaging, the new product and all that stuff, I did want to talk about something that a lot of people have already mentioned. And I'm not going to go into like, oh, this is just like sodas, because a lot of people have already made the comparison that, the concept behind the Pix line is very similar to Funko Sodas. So that's kind of obvious. With Funko Sodas, you bought a can just like this one here, a Superman, in case you're not familiar. You bought a Superman soda and you either were going to pull the common Superman, or if you were lucky, you would get the chase, which in this case was Bizarro, which was really cool. And, Funko Sodas did really well for a while. And, kind of, it looks like Funko is going to stop producing soda. We don't know for sure, but it definitely looks like it's going in that direction. Who knows? The jury's still out on that. But what I wanted to talk about is basically maybe some lessons that we can learn from Funko Soda that Thrilljoy could kind of try to maybe avoid some of the pitfalls of sodas, because I do think that they're already falling into what I see as the same trap that, Funko Sodas kind of fell into, and why they had a hard time sustaining their popularity. Because, at first, when Funko Sodas first came out, they were super popular. And one of the biggest reasons why is, they had a certain set of like, here's 20 characters, and then it turned into 40 and then it turned to 50. But that first like 20, 30 characters, for a while, everybody wanted to be completionists. Everybody wanted to get all of them. And something else that was unique with sodas is that chase factor. You wanted to be able to pull that 1 in 6. And, similarly with Thrilljoy, you want to pull that chase, the 1 in 6 chase, or even more so, you want to pull that super chase. And one of the I guess sales tactics with a product like that is people are, enticed to buy multiples. When there's a chase element like that, you want to go after it. You want to try to get that chase. So a lot of the time, especially at first with sodas, people wanted to buy 4, 5, 6 of them because they were excited. There were only 20 characters, so it didn't seem overwhelming to have to buy a few of each one. But what I'm getting at is that model is just not sustainable over time, because eventually people are not going to want to buy 3, 4, 5, 6 of these characters in order to pull the chase. And what happens is, in Funko's case, they kind of get like this false sense of how much demand there is for the product. So they start increasing the piece counts because they think, oh wow, this first wave of sodas sold out. Everybody's so hyped up about these. But the issue was that, a lot of that hype was around the fact that it was brand new and people were buying multiples. So then Funko, of course, increased piece counts. And then we all kind of know what happens from there is the commons become very, very hard to sell. Like this common, Superman's from that first wave. It's a little bit more valuable, but the commons with sodas became to the point where they were worth like $3, $4 if you're lucky on some of the commons, when it was like a 10, 20,000 piece count soda. So I feel like Thrilljoy could very, very easily fall into that same exact trap that sodas fell into, where they've got this first wave of different Pix figures. People are really excited about them. People are buying multiples. And then, all of a sudden, is Thrilljoy going to start kind of pumping out more and more? You can already see like the amount of figures that they have just as a brand new company is kind of overwhelming as it is. You see, like I'll have some screenshots up of just different ones that are coming out this year at SDCC. There's a lot of figures, and it can get to be a lot very quick if they're not careful. people, they're going to burn people out, and people who are buying 2, 3, 4, they're going to start buying 1, or they're going to start buying 0. And they're not going to always want to do the chase hunt of buying multiple, because, and this is the key, the reason why they're not going to want to keep doing that is because these are $20, and already, if you were going on the secondary market, if you wanted to buy a common of like this Joker, you could get it for like $8, $10. So basically half price, because these are $20. So what's going to happen is if you increase piece counts, these commons are going to be worth $5, $6. And people are not going to want to keep gambling $20 a piece and spending, $80 in order to get a chase, when they then have to unload all these commons. It's literally the exact same problem that Funko had with sodas. Funko maybe had some other problems with packaging and costs and things like that. Who knows what else there was. But what I'm getting at is, in order for a product like this to be sustainable, it has to have some ability to entice buyers without the chase element. People have to really fall in love with the figure itself, sort of like a Funko Pop. Pops, they do chases, but they don't do chases with every single pop. They have pops that stand alone. People want to buy them. People want to spend $12, $15 on the pop, and they don't care if there's a hunt for the chase. That's what I'm worried about with something like this. Is it's cool, it's fun, it's exciting to kind of rip into this and see which one you get and all that stuff, but I do worry that if people, like, pretend Gill-Man did not have these 2 chases, and you knew you were just buying a straight up Gill-Man that was 5,000 pieces, would you spend $20 on it? And would it have sold out at 5,000 pieces as a brand new company? I don't think so. I don't think they would have been able to sell 1,000 of these if there were no chase. And that to me is like a problem that they have to be very, very cautious of, especially as they're increasing the piece counts. I hope they watch this video, because this is something that always, like, as I was watching, sodas and kind of that timeline of their life cycle kind of unfold, that was something I was always aware of, was like, Funko needs to do something to adjust fast. Otherwise, this isn't going to be sustainable. I think Thrilljoy is going to run into that same issue. But with all of that said, those are kind of like the big red flags that I think Thrilljoy needs to kind of look out for. But I love the concept. I love the fact that they added the zipper. In fact, when I originally reviewed this product, you can go back and watch my video. I literally said, you know what they should do? They should take this and they should shrink it down to about this size and put it in a box and make it so that it's not quite a pop. I compared it to a wobbler, and this is definitely a little wider than a wobbler, but that's literally what they did. They took it and they put it in a box that was pretty much, slightly smaller than the original Pix panoramics. But there's one other thing I wanted to talk about with Thrilljoy in terms of like how they're running the business. There's been a lot of like kind of faux pas in the way they've communicated things, and a lot of stuff you've probably seen on social media, like when they did the Frodo, the 1 of 1, they kind of knew exactly where it would be, and there was a lot of criticism around that. I'm not going to get completely into that. I think, overall with that, I think they explained themselves. They talked through why they did it the way they did, and a lot of it was completely reasonable. But I think the problem that I see from that is just like, it kind of just gives you a tiny notch down in trust, because okay, well, Thrilljoy knows where the 1 of 1 is. And so like when you go to SDCC, I'm not saying everybody's going to think this way, but when you go to SDCC, and like last night I was watching, they were doing preview night, and they were on Whatnot, which is another thing that I can't say that I can get behind this. They go on Whatnot. They've done this a few times now, where they go on and they auction off their product for really ridiculous amounts. Like, the only thing I'll give them credit for is they do tell you during the auction, like, hey, the MSRP on this is whatever, $20, but people are bidding $100, $150 for some of these items. It's a little bit crazy, but I don't really like that they're doing that. It's not a good look for them at all. I think it really kind of probably rubs a lot of people the wrong way. They may not even realize. It's it's different when they sell a bunch of these to Chalice Collectibles or whoever, and then they go and auction them versus them doing it themselves. When they're doing it themselves, it just comes off very tacky. It comes off like they're trying to exploit their customer base and charging them hundreds of dollars for a product that they can go on their website and pick up. I don't like that they do that. They should just go on and sell them for, retail and open them, have some fun, get people engaged and all that stuff. It doesn't seem like they're going to change that because I feel like that criticism has been out there. But getting back to the Frodo thing and sort of like the trust factor and tying this to that preview night, I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, well, people already have it in their mind that Thrilljoy knew where this one of one is. So I'm thinking to myself, like, if I'm watching this auction, I'm wondering, there's no way that a one of one is going to get pulled during this auction on preview night. I'm not accusing them because I don't know for sure, but I would assume that Thrilljoy would be aware of where that one of one is so that they know it's going to get pulled during the convention or after the convention, not on preview night. So wherever those one of ones are, I would bet that they ensured that they were not going to get pulled on the first hour, when then it would completely impact the sales of their product the rest of the entire convention. Again, I'm not accusing or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, the little bit of cracks that you build in your trust with your customers, people will start questioning those things. So you have to be super duper careful with stuff like that, because if I was thinking about it, other people were probably thinking about it too. That's all I got to say just about like the company. And hopefully if you weren't interested in all that, you could have fast forwarded to here if you wanted to just see the unboxing. But we're going to go ahead and unbox these. Like I said, we've got 6 of the Leonardo. So I'm going to take these out of the brown boxes and then we'll get into all these and see what we think of the new product. All right, so we've got our Leonardos out, and I'm going to probably start with those since we do have 6 of them. And like I said, we'll talk through kind of initial impressions of the new product and all of that. I do like that these are sealed, very similar again to a soda where, you get some reassurance that nobody's tampered with it. I will say though, like, similar again with sodas, you do have that issue of weight. Like Krang is significantly heavier than Leonardo. I think Casey Jones is probably heavier than Leonardo, but those are the options that we've got. We've got the common, the chase, and then the super chase. And then they have this pull tab here where you rip it and you find out what you got. And I was actually curious if there was a way to do this where you didn't rip it. Like if I just kind of pushed, or if there's actually something that's keeping it. See, I think what they do is they put something right here maybe that makes it so that you can't just push it out. So that's kind of nice, actually. That's nice that you can't push it without tearing this open. The only problem is, like, they spend a good amount of money on like this exterior packaging, and then you're going to rip it, and now you kind of have like this nice exterior packaging that you can't really do anything with. I guess it really is kind of just trash. But let's go ahead. We'll rip into this first one. We'll see what we have. Here's our first one, and it is Leonardo. So you could see on the back immediately which one you have. You see that it's Leonardo, and then if you flip it around, there is the figure, and very, very cool. Again, it's basically, in my opinion, looks like what they did was they took this, they shrunk it down into the box, and they put it right in there. And my guess, again, just speculating, my guess is they probably had, like a lot of the ones that are coming out right now, the new Pix, I bet you a lot of these were originally in production to be in that other format. And they said, forget that, take the same mold and let's put it in a different box, put it in this box instead of using it the way we were going to use it before they kind of had more of that old panoramic style that people weren't really getting super excited about. This is much better, much better. I've heard a couple people talk about like the quality of these boxes. They're definitely cheap. You can tell they're probably, they do have some nice like design pieces, but you could feel that the cardboard and the plastic is pretty cheap. Let's go ahead and actually open just one of these up. We're not going to open all of these up, but I wanted to at least show off one of them so you could see this piece. They did continue to include the card like they did on the original panoramic, so you could see the number. This is number 302. I'm kind of curious, actually. Is this going to be like 303, 304, 56? I don't know if that's how it will work. I'm going to look at that, though, because it's kind of interesting to think about if it's all numbered in order. The card, it's cool that it's in there, but it does feel a little bit like an afterthought. It feels like they kind of just like threw it in there, and it doesn't have like a good place. It kind of just rattles around in the box. But there's the figure. Something I do not love is these little twisty ties. Like, it seems like they really wanted nothing to be, you know, kind of messing with the view of the figure, and maybe like they just couldn't figure out how to do an insert that didn't require those little twist ties. But I want to, when I get something like this, I don't want to be messing around like I am with like my, you know, with like stuff that you get for your kid that has 50 of these little twist ties before you can get the product out. I want to be able to take this figure right out and not have to mess with that stuff. That's a small like little nitpicky thing, but something that if they could fix that insert so you don't have those little ties, that would make it a little bit better. But there's our first Leonardo. First impressions on that one. We'll kind of cruise through some of these other ones a little bit faster because I know the video is probably already getting a little long with, you know, my review at the beginning. But here's our second one. Let's see what we have on this one. Oh my goodness, I ripped into it thinking it was going to be another Leonardo, but check that out. Wow. So I got to tell you that, well, that's really cool. So 96 piece, that is crazy. All right. That's pretty cool. See, that's the experience that I was looking for from the panoramics. I wanted to have that like excitement of ripping into this and like, you know, not just pulling it out of a brown box. Like having that rip factor is very cool. But I've got to tell you, if you were just kind of like casually picking these up at the store, I would not have known that this was the Krang. So even though I'm certain there is a weight difference between this one and Leonardo, if I had just picked these both up, I wouldn't have known, you know, to do that. I'm sure there's people who are going to kind of hunt them and weigh them and do all of that stuff. But man, that is cool. That is awesome. So there's Krang, 96 pieces. So that's cool. I mean, that's the piece, and that's exactly why people will buy multiples of them for a while. Again, I want to just keep, you know, reiterating that people are not going to buy 5 and 6 of these figures forever. Like, and they're going to run into a problem where they're going to have to either shrink piece counts or they're going to have to do something else. Another issue that I think they're going to have eventually, maybe not up front, is when they do this really cool way of having the figure be completely different than the common. It is cool. It is fun. But now, like, they've kind of closed the door on Krang. And if they ever want to revisit Krang, it's going to inevitably upset the people who have the 96 piece. Even if they do like a blacklight Krang, it's still going to hurt the, you know, the collectability of the people who got the really rare one to start with. But you know, not complaining, just something to think about. Again, I'm kind of speaking to Thrilljoy as if they're watching the video. They're not, they probably won't watch the video, but I'm speaking to them as if they are. But there's Krang, very cool. I don't know, do we even need to open? I mean, I guess we should open the other Leonardos just to see, because they were in 2 cases of 3. So I could still get a Casey Jones, or these could all just be more common Leonardos. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just rip into these and I'll fast forward so that you can just see me kind of doing the tearing piece. All right, let's just tear into these super quick. We're going to rip it, see if it's another Leonardo. Okay, so there's one. And the other thing I want to make sure I do before we move on to the next stuff, I want to still check and see if like the card number on one of these like matches the progression of that other one. So let's just do that with this one really quick. Okay, so this is 199. I think that other one was like 300. So kind of shows that maybe that part is truly random. Let's look at this one. Gosh, I don't want to spend too much time doing this, but I am curious. This one is number 49. So we got some really low numbers, but not sequential or anything like that. All right, we still have, what, two more. So we still could pull a Casey Jones, Leonardo, and then, wow, oh my goodness. Wow, we did really, I mean, I'm the first person I've seen who has done that. All three in one shot. That is pretty awesome. I'm going to screenshot that. Maybe I'll post this on Instagram, see if Thrilljoy comes and checks out the video. But man, that is cool. That's awesome. I mean, again, that's the fun part. That's the piece that people are gonna, be coming to Thrilljoy for, because Funko does not offer something like this. But I hope that Thrilljoy can sustain this and figure out a way to sustain this where people don't get burnt out and people still want to buy the figure even if there's not this super fun chase element. That's the piece that they need to figure out. All right, cool. Let me move these up top here and get those there. I will say, if you're interested in the Leonardos, the extras, I will have these up on my website. I have one more, so I already put away, but I've got 3 of these, so I'll have these up on my website if you're interested. I will price them extremely cheap, so www.thefunko411.com if you want to grab a Leonardo. All right, I feel like we should move on to maybe the Pixels and then go back to the Pix and kind of just like see what these are about, just to kind of do like a little bit of a comparison, and then we'll wrap up with those other 3 picks. Hopefully you guys enjoy this video. I know sometimes, like, if I get talking a lot, it's a little bit distracting when I'm not, like, my face isn't on the screen. People don't like just the hands. Everybody doesn't like the hand movements. I'm Italian, so what am I supposed to do about the hand movements? But all right, here's Beetlejuice. So the whole idea with these, and actually I kind of like this concept even more than I like the Pix concept, because this is kind of just copying sodas and pops combined. This is sort of like a mystery mini, but it's a really, really, really clever way to do a mystery mini. So before we get into it, let's look at the packaging. We've got Thrilljoy. The packaging is very nice. We've got a little pull rip tab right here, so we could rip that open, and then you open it up and you see which figure you got. But the really cool thing, well, first of all, cool, we got the sandworm. The really cool thing with this, though, is it actually just sits in there like a magnet, or as a magnet, because the figure has a magnet on it, and then the base of this has a magnet on it. So when you put it in there, it just sits there nice and clean. And look, I'm holding it upside down and it is not falling. I'm sure I could get it to fall, but it sat in there pretty good. I've seen other people open these. I love this design because I'm a big fan of mystery minis. And one thing that's really kind of like a challenge with mystery minis, you kind of just got to put them everywhere. You don't really have anywhere to display them. The fact that this is, whatever it was like 12 or 13 bucks or something like that, right? These are actually a good value for what they are. They've got a nice case. You put the mystery figure in there. And then the coolest part is that you can kind of continue to build on this set. And something I was curious about is, can I build on this even with a different line, or does it have to be the same one? I'm assuming I could actually like snap these together from different sets. So this one is the Corpse Bride. They do have like chase elements with these too. Like this one has a secret chase also. Let me see, I'll show you like the little card that they have. So they have this little card, and then it tells you that if you pull this gold version of Emily, then you get a Mega Pix version, which is like a 12-inch, like a supersized version of the figure. So if we are lucky enough, which would be crazy based on our luck that we've got already, if we were lucky enough to pull a gold Emily, you would get a Mega Pix gold Emily. So here is Emily, and it looks like we just have the regular version of her with the worm. And I guess depending on which, this is something a little bit, I'm not sure how I feel, but depending on which version of, or which character you get, one of them will have this little stand to kind of complete the whole image of the set. So if I had these two, then I would put this stand basically like at the top, and it would kind of just join them all together. Since I'm not going to do that, I'll probably just put that to the side. But what I wanted to see is like, can I still snap these together? And the answer is yes. So that is very cool. I really, really, really like that. And I actually have like almost zero complaints with this product at all, because I think this is really cool. I think the fact that you could put them and interchange them is really cool. I think that if you want to have the full set displayed, that they give you this is really cool. If I don't need it, I'll just put it to the side. I don't need to keep it. And I should say you can also just stand them on each other like this. Although if you do that, there is no magnet. So they are just like kind of relying on the weight to stand on each other. So I guess that could be a problem if you really like continued to stack them together. But still, the way they did this, the way they snap together like that is really nice. Let's check out our turtle, and then we'll open our last 3 other Pix figures. But yeah, I gotta be honest. I think this is their winner. I mean, I know that I'm sure they consider this to be their main product, and I'm sure they're right, because this is where they're going to make a lot more money, and people are more interested in the bigger figures. But in terms of like design and concept, I think this was really, really a great idea. I just realized that they have a little pull tab on these. I've been ripping them the whole time, but here is our turtle. Let's see who we have. It is, we got Shredder. So there's Shredder. We'll take him out really quick. Again, yeah, these are definitely like mystery mini type size. And then he just sits right in there. Very nice. Yeah, really, really cool. And then if we wanted to, just snap all 3 together, just like that. I like that. I like that a lot. All right, let's put these down, and we'll open up our final 3. All right, let's start off with Joker. This is the only one I actually got in a store. So we just happened to be in the mall. We went to Box Lunch. They had this, so I grabbed it just because I didn't pick it up. And you'll also see, like, this is the only one that has just a 1-in-6 chase, not a super chase. I picked up these other ones because they, similar to the turtles, they had the super chase. So I wanted to take a shot at that, but we'll see what we have for Joker. Which one do we have? Oh my gosh, I think we have the chase. I'm pretty sure. Yep, we sure do. Wow, we are getting super, super, super lucky on these Thrilljoy Pix. But there is the Chase Joker. So you can see he's got a bit of a different body. He's got the green vest instead of the purple jacket. So slightly different. And again, this is like sort of, I would say, what Funko has done typically with like their chases. It's usually more of just like a subtle like accessory difference or something like that. And I think that's okay. They can do stuff like this and still these will sell well, but I bet you that the ones that are going to sell out faster are these, because they have the super chase. These will probably sit a little bit longer, which kind of goes back to my point of like, if this was sold without a chase, how quickly would they be able to sell as many as they produce? 7,500. You know, you got to think Thrilljoy is a brand new company. I know, you know, Brian Mariotti has a following from Funko, but that is still a lot of production for something that's completely brand new. But there is Joker. We've got 2 left. Let's see what we have. Can we pull one of these crazy ones? Would it be insane if we pulled a super chase on He-Man and got that slime He-Man? I don't think that's going to happen. All right, let's see. Let's pull and find out. Wow, we got another chase. This is insane. We are getting insanely lucky. There is the Faker chase, not the super chase, but still, that is crazy. All right, I'm very happy with the luck that we've had on all of these. Let's do our let me spend another second at this. I didn't even really show you the figure. There's the figure. I'm kind of just like so shocked by the luck that we're having that I wanted to move past it, but there's Faker. And then our final one is Gill-Man. I think this one was super popular because of that that Super Chase. And, you know, same reason for this one being super popular. I would be ecstatic if we pulled that Super Chase, but really out of the bunch, the Krang to me was the best one, and we did that one right at the beginning of the video. But here is Gill-Man. Maybe what I should do this time is, should we do it this way so that you can't immediately see? And we'll go this route instead and see if we have a chase. Let's look. No, I should have stuck with my normal method. This time we have just the common, or now they're calling it hero, which I kind of like that. I kind of like that they're calling it their hero product basically instead of common. But there's Gill-Man, man. All right, well, that is all I've got for you guys today. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed opening these. I don't know how many of these I'm going to get. I'm sure when there's characters that I really love, like if they did Back to the Future and they had Marty and Doc, I would probably buy like 50 of them just to get the, you know, the Chase Doc or whatever I had to do to get maybe they would do Einstein as the Super Chase or something. If they did something like that, of course they're going to sucker me into it. But other than that, I'm probably going to try to keep the reins on how many of these that I'm buying, because I just, again, I collect too much stuff. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Hit that like button, and if you haven't subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button before you head out. Do all that stuff, and I will see you on the next one.